Think about those incredible moments where medical technology steps in after an injury, broken legs suddenly held firm by gleaming hardware.
Yeah,
It's almost science fiction, really, the way these devices can piece us back together.
absolutely.
And what might surprise you is just the sheer scale of the industry behind these tiny saviors.
Exactly. And that's what we're doing today, right? Taking a deep dive into the global market for these trauma implants.
Right.
So things like plates, screws, nails, pins and wires used to mend broken bones and other, well, traumatic injuries.
Okay.
And our guide for this whole exploration is a pretty comprehensive market report for 2025. Gives us a fascinating look at the current landscape and what the future might hold.
Okay, so the mission control for this deep dive is really to get the vital statistics of this market.
Mm-hmm.
We want to know how big it is right now,
Mm-hmm.
where it's heading, growth-wise, what's actually fueling that expansion,
Right.
and which parts of the world, which types of implants are seeing the most action. It's about getting a solid handle on a really critical corner of healthcare.
Couldn't have put it better myself. And yeah, all the insights we'll be sharing today, they come directly from this 2025 Global Trauma Implants Market Report.
Right?
So let's just jump right in. What's the current value, globally speaking?
Yeah, let's talk numbers. What kind of economic engine are we looking at here?
Okay. So in 2025, the estimated global market size for these trauma implants, it's pretty staggering. We're looking at USD 800 and 624.5 million.
Wow.
So yeah, over 8.5 billion US dollars just this year.
8.5 billion.
That gives you a real sense of the massive scale, you know?
Yeah, it really does. And is this market expected to keep growing, or is it sort of plateauing?
Oh, far from plateauing. No,
Yeah.
the projections show some really substantial growth. The market's expected to reach USD 1,400 and 273.51 million by 2033.
Whoa, that's a huge jump. So what kind of annual growth are we talking about to see that kind of expansion?
Well, the report estimates a compound annual growth rate, or CEGR, of 6.50%. That's between 2025 and 2033. So that really highlights the strong momentum here.
Okay,
And just for context, these figures, they're calculated from a 2024 base year, looking forward to 2033.
got it. 6.5% CEGR. Okay, so we've got the global overview. Now, how does this big picture break down geographically? Which regions are the major players right now?
Right now, North America holds the largest slice of the pie. We're talking over 40% of the global revenue in 2025.
Over 40%. Wow.
Yeah, and that translates to a market size of USD 391.07 million.
So North America is the current heavyweight champion then. What kind of growth trajectory are they on? Is it keeping pace?
Well, their projected CAGR from 2025 to 2033 is 5.0%. So still strong growth, but maybe not quite as fast as the global average.
Okay, 5%.
And if you look closer at the individual countries,
Yeah.
the U.S. market in 2025 is around $2.5 billion
Yeah.
with a CAGR of 4.8%.
Hmm.
But Canada's market, while smaller at about $383 million, is actually growing faster at 5.8%.
Huh? Canada showing faster growth than the U.S. That's an interesting little wrinkle.
Yeah, it is. And Mexico's market is around $290 million with a growth rate of 5.5%.
So what makes North America such a dominant force in this market to begin with?
Well, there are several factors, really. They have highly advanced healthcare systems, obviously.
Right.
And unfortunately, a higher occurrence of musculoskeletal disorders, conditions affecting bones, muscles, joints.
Yeah, those become more common with age too, right?
Exactly. There's a significant aging population in the region, plus, a considerable number of accidents and just really robust investment in medical research and development. R&D is huge there.
Okay, that paints a clear picture. Now, how does Europe stack up against North America? Second place.
Yep. Europe holds the second largest market share. It's over 30% of the global revenue in 2025.
Okay.
And that market size is about USD 2,500 to 1.11 million. Their anticipated CAGR, looking out to 2033, is 5.6%.
So slightly faster growth projected for Europe than North America.
Seems that way, yeah. 5.6 versus 5.0%.
And which countries in Europe are the key drivers here? Is it concentrated?
Well, the major markets include the UK, Germany, France, Italy, Russia, and Spain,
Okay.
to give you some specifics. The UK market in 2025 is estimated around 420 million US dollars with a CGR of 6.4%. Germany's is bigger, nearly 500 million, growing at 5.8%.
Right.
France is about 230 million at 4.8% growth. Italy around 215 million at 5.0%. Russian is actually quite large, nearly 390 million, but slower growth at 4.6%. And Spain is around 205 million with a 4.7% CGR.
So a pretty consistent growth story across the board in the major European economies, maybe with the UK and Germany slightly ahead on growth rate.
Yeah, that's a fair summary.
What's fueling this expansion in Europe? Is it the same stuff as North America, or are there unique aspects?
There are definitely similarities. Healthcare advancements, that's a big one. A rising number of orthopedic injuries, too.
Okay.
Europe also benefits from, strong healthcare infrastructure generally,
Right.
that aging population factor again, and ongoing technological innovation in the medical field. Lots of med tech development there, too.
Okay, makes sense. Now let's shift our focus because the report flagged the Asia-Pacific region, APAC, as the fastest growing. What's the story there?
Absolutely. You're right. APAC is where the really rapid growth is happening. In 2025, it held around 23% of the global market share.
Okay, so at $2 billion.
Yeah, roughly USD 2069.88 million. But here's the key number. Its CAGR from 2025 to 2033 is projected at a really impressive 9.2%.
9.2%. Wow, that's significantly higher than North America or Europe.
Exactly. It makes it the region with the most rapid growth worldwide.
What does that signify, that rapid growth in APAC?
Well, it's partly economic development, of course, but it also points to potentially a significant shift in global healthcare priorities, more investment in trauma care,
Right.
a growing need, and maybe a bit of catching up in terms of access and adopting newer technology compared to, say, North America or Europe.
That's a really significant growth rate. Which countries within APAC are leading this charge?
So China is the largest market in the region by far. It's about 870 million US dollars in 2025 with an 8.7% CAGR.
Still very strong.
Very. But India is particularly noteworthy. It's the fastest growing within APAC, boasting a CAGR of 11.1%.
11%.
Yeah. Its 2025 market size is smaller, around 207 million, but that growth rate is huge. Then you've got Japan, South Korea, Australia, Singapore, Taiwan, and Southeast Asia also making, substantial contributions.
So what's powering this massive expansion across Asia-Pacific? It must be a mix of things.
It really is. A confluence of factors, rising healthcare investments, definitely. That's expanding infrastructure, improving access.
Okay.
There's also an increasing incidence of orthopedic injuries, just like elsewhere, but maybe starting from a lower base in some areas. Growing awareness of treatments is key, too.
Right.
Plus, you have that large and aging population dynamic, a rise in accidents associated with, more traffic and industrialization, and significant technological advancements happening right across the region.
Okay, powerful combination. Moving further south, what's the picture looking like in South America?
South America holds a market share of just over 5% in 2025.
Okay.
The market size there is about USD 327.73 million. But the projected CAGR is pretty healthy at 7.2% from 2025 to 2033.
So growing faster than North America and Europe, but not as fast as APAC.
Exactly.
Which countries are the main players down there?
Brazil is the largest market. It's around 140 million US dollars with a strong 7.8% CAGR.
Okay.
Argentina, Colombia, Peru, and Chile also make up significant parts of the market in that region.
And what's driving the growth we're seeing in South America? Similar theme.
Pretty similar, yeah. An increase in injuries related to accidents is a factor. Expanding access to healthcare services is crucial.
Right.
Advancements in medical technology reaching the region, improvements in surgical techniques, and, again, that growing aging population are all contributing.
Got it. Now, let's look at the Middle East. What can you tell us about that region? Smaller share, I assume.
Yeah, smaller still. The Middle East accounts for around 2% of the global market share in 2025.
Oh.
That translates to a market size of about USD 344.98 million. But interestingly, its projected CAGR is 7.8% between 2025 and 2033.
Huh. 7.8%. It's actually faster than South America and nearly as high as China's growth rate.
It is, yeah. It's a region showing strong growth potential from its current base.
Which countries should we be paying attention to in the Middle East?
Saudi Arabia is the largest market there, about 121 million US dollars, and it has an even higher CAGR of 8.1%.
Wow.
Followed by the UAE and Turkey as other significant players.
And what are the key factors fueling that strong growth in the Middle East?
Again, some familiar themes, but maybe with a regional twist. Increasing investments in healthcare infrastructure that's huge in places like Saudi Arabia and the UAE.
Right.
advancements in medical technologies being adopted, improving overall infrastructure, which helps access, a rising prevalence of injuries, that growing aging population, and greater awareness of treatment options.
Okay, makes sense. Finally, let's turn our attention to Africa. Smallest share, I imagine?
That's correct. Africa currently holds approximately 1% of the global market share.
Okay.
The market size is about USD 189.74 million in 2025. The projected CAGR is 6.8% from 2025 to 2033.
So 6.8%. Still growing faster than the most established markets, North America and Europe.
Yep, just slightly above the global average CAGR, actually.
Which countries are the primary markets for trauma implants in Africa?
South Africa is the largest market by a fair bit. It's around 67 million US dollars with a 7.7% CAGR. Nigeria also represents a significant portion of the market.
And what's behind the growth we're seeing in Africa? Similar drivers again.
Largely, yes. Increasing healthcare investments, though, perhaps from a lower starting point. A rising number of accidents and injuries is a factor. Improvements in healthcare infrastructure are critical. There's growing demand for orthopedic surgeries as access improves, and ongoing efforts just to enhance general healthcare awareness among the population.
It's really fascinating to see those diverse growth rates and, the different mixes of contributing factors across all these regions. APAC really stands out, though.
Definitely.
Now, the report also breaks down the market differently, not just by region, but by the specific types of implants being used and who the primary end users are.
Right.
Let's maybe start by looking at the different kinds of implants. What's dominant?
Okay. So when we categorize by implant type, screws currently hold the dominant share, the major share.
Screws. Okay, why is that?
Well, it's largely because they're just so widely used in a huge array of fracture fixation procedures. They're fundamental for stabilizing bone fragments, often used together with plates.
Right.
Plus, their relatively low cost and, frankly, ease of application play a big role in their widespread use. They're versatile.
Makes sense. And in terms of growth, which type of implant is seeing the most rapid increase in demand?
That would be interlocking nails.
Interlocking nails, okay.
Yeah, we're seeing a significant rise in their use, particularly for fractures of long bones, think femur or tibia.
Okay. Why the shift towards them?
They offer, superior stability compared to some other methods, often leads to better patient outcomes, faster healing.
Better healing, right.
And this growth is really being propelled by advancements in surgical techniques that favor using them, an increasing number of trauma cases overall, and that general move towards minimally invasive procedures where possible.
Interesting. The report also mentions other categories like plates and pins wires. So while screws and interlocking nails might be leading in share and growth, these others are still crucial parts of the toolkit, I'd imagine.
Oh, absolutely. Couldn't do without them. Plates, they're designed to provide broader support across a fractured area, often secured with multiple screws. Think of them like internal splints for more complex breaks.
Gotcha. Internal splints.
And pins and wires, well, they're used in all sorts of applications, frequently for temporary fixation during surgery or for stabilizing smaller fractures, especially in places like hands and feet. Each type really plays a vital role addressing different kinds of traumatic injuries.
Okay, good overview of the types. Let's switch gears now and talk about who is actually using these implants. Where are they primarily being implanted? The end users.
Right. So hospitals currently represent the largest segment of end users for trauma implants.
That seems intuitive.
Yeah, it's understandable. Hospitals are usually the central hub for trauma care, right? They've got the specialized surgical units. They manage a high volume of both routine and complex accident cases. And critically, they have the necessary infrastructure and resources for actually performing these implant surgeries and providing that comprehensive postoperative care.
Okay, so hospitals are the biggest slice. But which type of end user is seeing the fastest growth in their use of these implants?
That would be ambulatory surgical centers, or ASCs.
ASCs. Okay, tell me more about that.
Yeah, they're the fastest growing segment. And this trend is really being driven by a growing preference for minimally invasive surgical techniques.
Right, we mentioned that with the interlocking nails.
Exactly. And also the desire for patients to have shorter recovery periods. ASCs often offer a more cost-effective setting for many orthopedic procedures compared to traditional hospitals.
Makes sense. Less overhead.
Right. And we're seeing an increasing number of advanced implants being utilized in these outpatient facilities. It meets that rising demand for, same-day surgery options where appropriate.
Yeah, that definitely aligns with the broader trend we're seeing across healthcare moving procedures to outpatient settings whenever it's safe and appropriate.
Precisely.
Now, the report also touches on the bigger picture factors,
Mm.
what's really driving this market forward, and maybe some of the challenges it faces. Let's talk drivers first. What are the key engines of growth?
Yeah, the report highlights several significant growth drivers. The increasing global aging population is a major one.
Right, more falls, more fractures.
Exactly. Older individuals are just more prone to falls and fractures that need these kinds of orthopedic interventions. Then there's the rise in sports-related injuries.
Ah, yeah. Weekend warriors and pros alike.
Right. It creates a consistent demand for specialized trauma implants. And finally, growing healthcare investments, particularly in developing parts of the world, are expanding infrastructure and just improving access to necessary surgical procedures.
Okay, aging, sports, and investment. And what about the flip side? What factors might be acting as sort of brakes on this market's expansion?
Well, the high cost is definitely a factor. Both the trauma implants themselves and the often complex surgical procedures needed.
Yeah, surgery isn't cheap.
Exactly. That can be a significant barrier, particularly for patients in less affluent regions or without good insurance coverage.
Hmm.
And related to that, in developing countries especially, a lack of adequately equipped healthcare facilities and also a shortage of trained surgeons who can perform these complex trauma surgeries can really limit the market's potential reach.
Cost and access, the classic healthcare challenge.
Pretty much.
The report also gives us a little glimpse into the future with some key market trends. What's kind of on the horizon in terms of innovation?
Well, one really exciting trend is the increasing development and adoption of patient-specific implants.
Patient-specific, like custom-made.
Exactly. Custom designed using imaging data to perfectly match an individual's unique anatomy.
Wow.
The idea is that this could lead to better surgical outcomes, maybe reduced complications, better fit, better function.
Sounds fantastic. What else?
Another fascinating development is the integration of sensors into implants, what we call smart implants.
Smart implants.
Ugh.
Seriously, what do they do?
Yeah. The idea is they can monitor the healing process in real time. Track load bearing, detect infection early, things like that. They provide valuable data back to both the patients and their physicians.
Wow, smart implants.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Does the report give any indication of when we might see widespread use of this kind of tech? What are the hurdles?
Well, widespread adoption is probably still some years away, but the report definitely highlights the increasing R&D in this area. The challenges are things like, miniaturizing the sensors, ensuring they're biocompatible long-term, figuring out power supply inside the body,
Right, practical stuff.
and then integrating all the data they collect into clinical workflows in a useful way.
Yeah.
But the potential to really revolutionize post-operative care is just enormous.
Absolutely. It sounds like something out of the future, but it's being worked on now.
It is.
Finally, the report gives us a bit of a snapshot of who the major players are in this competitive landscape.
Yeah.
Who are the key companies making these implants?
Yeah, it's a mix, really. You've got the large, well-established global corporations, the big names in medtech,
Okay.
and then also more specialized regional players who might focus on particular types of implants or specific geographic markets.
And what are they focusing on? How do they compete?
Well, constant innovation is key. Developing new and improved products, forming strategic alliances or partnerships. There's significant investment going into things like advanced biomaterials.
Right, materials that the body accepts better.
Exactly. Also 3D printing technologies for creating those customized patient-specific implants we talked about, and even robotic-assisted surgical systems to help enhance precision during the implantation surgery.
Robotics too, wow.
Yeah. And we're also seeing a trend of mergers and acquisitions, M&A activity, as companies look to consolidate or gain new technologies. Plus, companies are expanding their presence, their infrastructure in those fast-growing emerging markets, which is definitely intensifying the competition.
And the report even highlighted a couple of recent examples of this innovation in action, right? Specific product launches.
Yes, precisely. Just this past summer, July 2024, a company called Orthofix Medical Inc. received regulatory clearance, 510(k) clearance, and did the first U.S. implant of their FitBone system.
FitBone. What's special about that?
It's a really interesting technology. It's designed to treat large bone defects and also limb length discrepancies, potentially in a single surgical procedure, which is a significant step forward for complex cases.
Okay, that sounds impressive. And the other example?
The other one was Johnson & Johnson MedTech. In October 2024, they launched the initial phase of their VoLT system. That stands for Variable Angle Optimized Locking Technology Plating System.
Okay, VLT system. What's the goal there?
The aim is to provide surgeons with enhanced flexibility and stability when they're managing fractures using plates and screws. More options for locking screws at different angles.
Gotcha. So these are really concrete examples of the kinds of ongoing advancements happening right now in this field.
Exactly. It's not static at all.
Okay, so let's try and synthesize all this information. We've covered a lot of ground. What are the core takeaways from our deep dive into this global trauma implants market report?
Yeah, let's boil it down. I think first, we've clearly uncovered a really substantial global market for trauma implants here in 2025, worth over $8.5 billion.
Right, big number.
Second, there's strong growth anticipated over the coming decade, that 6.5% CAGR overall. But third, that growth is particularly strong in the Asia-Pacific region that's the hotspot.
APAC at over 9% growth.
Exactly. Fourth, looking at segments, interlocking nails are the fastest growing type of implant, driven by minimally invasive techniques.
Okay.
And fifth, ambulatory surgical centers, ASCs, are the most rapidly expanding category of end users, reflecting that shift to outpatient care.
Got it. Nails and ASCs are the fast movers.
Then sixth, this growth was fundamentally fueled by big demographic shifts like the aging global population, but also a rising incidence of injuries and increasing investments in healthcare infrastructure globally.
Right. The drivers.
But seventh, we have the challenges. The high costs associated with implants and surgery and limitations in access to advanced surgical care in certain regions remain as significant hurdles.
Costs and access.
And finally, number 8, we're seeing these really exciting advancements towards personalized, patient-specific implants and even smart implants with sensors, which hold incredible potential to transform patient outcomes in the future.
That's a great summary. So the real aha moment here, I think, is understanding not just the massive scale of this market today, but its
Yeah.
really dynamic growth trajectory.
Yeah.
And this complex interplay of factors, demographics, technology, economics that are shaping its future. It's a fascinating intersection.
It really is. Medical need, technological innovation, and global economics all rolled into one market.
Yeah.
And, considering that rapid pace of innovation we just talked about in materials science, in sensor tech, in 3D printing, it prompts a really interesting question for you, the listener, to maybe ponder.
Okay.
What might the landscape of this trauma implant market actually look like another decade from now, in, say, 2035? And maybe more importantly, how might these ongoing innovations further improve patient recovery and maybe, just maybe, make these crucial medical devices more accessible to people all around the world?